Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com. You can find cool stuff in stock every day, and check out our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. And finally, check out our new Altar Sleeves. You can get your custom sleeve image of the Magic Mics crew today at AltarSleeves.com/MagicMics. Because I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Eric Campbell.
Hello, everybody.
Reuben Bressler.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
It's a wonderful Sunday afternoon as we record these things, at least on the Eastern
It is 3
Standard.
below zero here currently.
Wow.
It is 80 degrees outside.
Would you live there? Why would you live where the air hurts your face?
Because my friends are here, the cost of living is reasonable, and good cheese and beer.
The cost of living is -3. Meanwhile,
That's part of the cost.
It is 67 here in sunny Southern California.
Shut up.
0% precipitation, 20% humidity. Slight breeze coming off the coast.
But see, I'm the Wisconsin girl at heart. You guys have seen me when we used to do the set reviews. We would go down there, and I would be dying, and Evan's like, "It's only 65," and I was just sweating like the penguin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 85 right now outside. Just want you to know.
Yeah, Florida is a different problem because it's 85 and also 85% humidity. Yeah.
And it's February, so
The
here comes the
worst weather
summer.
I've ever experienced is at the arrival gate at Orlando International Airport. It's gross.
It's even worse when Evan doesn't show up to pick you up.
Hey-o. Wow, a man forgets a time. Well, we begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Reuben will tell us who was the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 mono-red humans. Reuben?
We get our comments from a lot of sources, primarily from the YouTube comments, of course, but also from CoolStuffInc.com, the articles, the Reddit. We get some from the Patreon, some from the Facebook, and this week's winner is from the Twitter.
Ooh.
Nicholas Lucarelli at Katana Soul 2 writes, "Just watched the latest top 10 for Mono Red Humans, and even though it isn't in a lot of decks, it was in my favorite Dragon Demigod Stomps, which aided my Demigod Revenge and Rakdos Pit Dragon with Gathan Raiders."
What is that?
I love Gathan Raiders.
Yes.
So Gathan Raiders... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, if you got it, you go.
No, Gathan Raiders is one of the weirdest morphs that's ever been printed. It was originally from Future Sight, reprinted in Arch Enemy, because I guess they needed more complicated stuff. It's a 3/3 for 3 colorless red for a human warrior. But I don't think I've ever paid retail for Gathan Raiders, because it has Hellbent. Gathan Raiders gets +2/+2 as long as you have no cards in hand, and it has Morph of discard a card. So, you pay 3 colorless. You could play it in every deck, every color.
Any color.
Pay 3 colorless, play a 2/2, discard a card, get a 3/3. Discarding the card, of course, helped you get it towards Hellbent. Go to town.
Yeah, this card had all sorts of amazing interactions with Madness, and there was Madness in the 37 mechanics of Future Sight, which was great. It could go in.
Well, Fiery Temper was a time-shifted card,
Yes,
which had Madness of a red, so a lot of the time you would play your Gathan Raiders and discard a Fiery Temper and deal 3 damage and have.
and we won't go into the special actions of morphing and timing and
one of the
triggers.
most complicated. Yeah.
We're good.
It's ultimately very complicated, while it's also very straightforward, which is the best Magic cards, right? Where you're like, it's just a 3/3, and if you have no cards, it's a 5/5, and everything else will kind of figure it out as it happens.
Yeah, the gameplay was very deep with that card.
Yeah, but a 5-mana 5/5 in red back in the Future Sight times was big deals. Ooh, not so much big deal anymore. That's okay. But thank you, Nicholas, for being a part of the show. Please contact Erin on social media before she blocks you on all of them.
Twitter's the one where you're going to get blocked.
That's the number one. You're worried there.
I'm going to say that you probably have Nicholas blocked.
No, actually, I was able to see the tweet that you showed. The winning tweet did not appear blocked. I didn't have to click to see it or anything.
Well,
so far, so good. But there's plenty of time to screw it up.
It's true.
Yeah, okay then. Well, thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate, because it's time to talk about our favorite Pete Vender's cards. He has been making Magic cards for a long time. Illustrating
Since
forever.
Basically the beginning.
Yeah.
About 300 cards?
I saw art of his from the 90s.
I saw the Legends stuff, right? Did he do anything before the Legends? He did some dark?
Antiquities.
Ooh, Antiquities, okay.
He may have done... I don't think he did anything from Arabian Nights or the Dark. But I did see some stuff from Antiquities.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can try to find his oldest stuffer, which appears to be he did Sage of Latnam in Antiquities, and then he went from Legends from there.
Sage of Latnam with the super long beard. He also did Gauntlet of just a picture of a fist. Gauntlet of Might, Gauntlet of Power.
You sure he did that one?
Something.
I don't know if he did the Gauntlet of Might.
Well, there is a Gauntlet that he did. I don't know if it's...
Sure. It's there somewhere.
Or like Might Stone or something like that.
Sure. Might Stone. He did Might Stone. You're right.
Might Stone.
Which was in Antiquities. So that's also another one.
Yeah.
Yep. So either way, Pete Venters has been around Magic for a very long time, has lots of really cool cards. Somehow, there are 2 Sames on my list of all the Pete Venters cards that exist.
I have 2 Sames as well and 1 higher.
That's right. So we share some numbers. We'll get to them later. But we do get to get started here with our number 10. Reuben, what's your number 10?
So my list, I'm not surprised I don't have any hires or sames. Because I looked at the cards that have like tournament pedigree from Pete Venters, and I was like, I don't really need to have tournament pedigree on my Pete Venters list, you know? Like I'm just going to pick art that I remember.
Sure.
Art that stuck out to me. And the first Magic novel that I read was the Mercadian Masks story. And the thing about the Mercadian Masks novel is that it mirrored the flavor text and the art of the set pretty identically. Like, the parts of the novel, and you could see them on Magic cards. They were almost identical. And one of the big climactic scenes of the novel occurs when the Weatherlight has to sort of blast out of Mercadia and get out of Dodge ASAP because the Predator flagship is right on their tail, which is depicted in Mercadia's Downfall.
Okay.
Mercadia's Downfall is 2 colorless and a red for an instant. Each attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each non-basic land defending player controls. It's an uncommon from Mercadian Masks. So this is like a Trumpet Blast effect. It's an uncommon Trumpet Blast. But you can see in the art, there's the Weatherlight, and you can see the Predator flagship kind of flowing out of it as well.
Yeah, with an explosion that shook the foundation of the city, the Weatherlight burst from the underground hangar.
This is beautiful.
Wow, that's really
cool.
It's a
gorgeous piece. I love this one.
And just the scope of it, the choice to like go far away. Like, you know, you could have zoomed in and just showed like the mouth of the hangar, for lack of a better term, but the choice to like scale it all the way back just so you could see the size of this hangar, because that you know, wherever they were coming out of, I remember was quite large.
Because that's like Mercadia. That's the giant, like, floating city.
Upside down.
Stronghold, wasn't it?
Mountain.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, it's important to... I like that he chose to focus on the scale of that.
Yeah, it's super nice. Aaron, what's your number 10?
So my number 10 was a callback to one of my favorite janky cards that was originally printed in Visions. And it's just a nice kind of polar opposite to what the original does. And I love the art. It's very lovely. My number 10 is Chrono Savant. So Chrono Savant was printed in only once in Time Spiral. 5 colorless and a white for a creature giant. 5 power and 5 toughness. You can pay 1 colorless and a white to return Chrono Savant from your graveyard to play tapped. And you can skip your next turn. You have to skip your next turn. This is a callback to Necro Savant, which originally came out in Visions. Shout out to Visions.
Yeah.
Jamora in the house. 3 colorless and 3 black for a summon Necro Savant. You can pay 3 and 2 black and sacrifice a creature to put Necro Savant into play. It doesn't say tapped. Use this ability only during your upkeep and only if Necro Savant is in your graveyard. Also has 5 power and 5 toughness. And one of my favorite flavor texts ever of I remember my first death. I just love it so much. And I love, you know, I love that about Time Spiral, just those callbacks and, you know, things that newer players may not necessarily grasp, but the OGs like me are like, I get you.
Yeah, this is one of those cards that, you know, was kind of exciting at first, you know, when you're like, wow, you know, a 2 mana 5/5 out there is a turn worth, you know, getting basically a 5/5 for 2 mana. No, but it's okay to know. Yeah. To understand that you kind of had to play with it and go, wow, I can't block anything, and I just skip my next turn, so they get to bash you upside the face first, which is
this did see a little tiny bit of play. This, of course, was in the Martyr of Sands deck that Gabriel Nassif, Tron Martyr Life, that Gabriel Nassif brought to Worlds in 2006 and almost pulled off the upset of the century with.
Yeah.
Chrono Savant was a piece of that deck just to have some recursion and some finishing ability.
Yeah, at some point you're like, I'm at 237 life, so like, okay, I guess I'll just
Might
make
as well
this
skip
thing.
a turn.
Yeah, it ain't gonna hurt me. All right, so for my number 10 here, this is one of my favorite Easter eggs about Magic. And it's silly and it's juvenile, and I don't care because I'm 13 forever. All right, but. At one point in time, Pete Venters, and he's known for this, and I'm sure we'll talk about many of them, but he's known for making goblin cards and showing a lot of goblins and whatnot. And so there were tons of goblins to show up in Onslaught because it was a tribal block and everyone was really excited about it. And he made this goblin called Ember Mage Goblin. And Ember Mage Goblin is very unique in that if you just look it up, you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about. You're not going to be able to see it. Google and or eBay, look for the foil version of Ember Mage Goblin. There's a wiener.
Yeah.
There's a wiener. The boy's got a wiener.
I remember this.
And it's hilarious, and it cracks me up every single time. And they caught it on the non-foil, but they did not catch it in the foil, and it's there forever, God help us. Ember Mage Goblin is a red and 3 generic mana for a 1/1 uncommon goblin wizard. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a card named Ember Mage Goblin, reveal it, and put it into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library, and you can tap to deal 1 damage to any target. That's what it does. And I'm a child, yes. But it cracks me.
No, I get it.
It's just so silly, and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe that's on a Magic card, and it's on a Magic card.
That's a penis.
I mean, infamy is a reason to get in the record books and is a reason to stay there. And, I would rather a card be a little bit scandalous than just be some, random art that we're never going to talk about. I still think about the Octavia Orangutan, was it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where they're bumping uglies in the back, That's great.
It's silly.
Those childish, background inside joke kind of things. That was the entire point of Unhinged was butts and stuff. So
there you go.
I think it's also a nice callback to something we were talking about in the pre-show of just enjoying something for the fact that it can never be done again. They could never sneak 2 gorillas swapping slime in the back of a card ever again. They could never do that. But you can look back on that and be like, that was a different time.
It was crazy, wasn't it? Stuff is nuts up in here. All right, number 9
Literally.
Oh my gosh, Aaron, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is the first higher on my list.
Fair enough. Reuben, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is probably the Pete Venters card that I've cast the most. And probably the Pete Venters card that a lot of us have cast the most, because it's a card that, it's our 23rd playable in a lot of core set drafts. It's a card that picks up in value as depending on how good the Wind Drakes of a format are. You might want to main deck a Plummet, right? Maybe just to have your bases covered. Colorless and a green, destroy target creature with flying. Originally, Magic 2011 was the first time we ever saw Plummet, and it has Pete Venters on the art.
Wow.
Oh, man.
I mean, I love the way that this giant sort of wave, the vine's going to come and get you, the way it draws your eyes around the frame, all the way to the person who's upside down, and you're like, oh, wow, they're upside down.
Yeah, and it's a Sphinx, too. It took me a while to realize what was even going on in this art, because you have the Dutch angle, you have the vines coming out at a weird angle, so you sort of have this circular, ovular art. The main character is upside down, but you're not even drawn to the main character, you're drawn to the scope and the vertigo effect of the camera. It's a deep piece.
And in many ways, this is one of those cards that you're not going to really see made anymore. Wizards has stopped making things this narrow. And nowadays, you add an extra mana and it can destroy an enchantment or an artifact.
Well, then they gave us the one from Clipwings where it was like sacrifice a creature, which I thought was a neat twist on that.
Yeah, it was definitely sweet. But, these days, everything has to have 7 modes on it so we can make sure everything's all right for a best of 1 or whatever.
Right.
For my number 9, I chose a card that I felt did a great job at expressing emotion. This wasn't the original printing. This was after it was printed in 9th edition, and there's not a lot to write home about 9th edition, but I really enjoyed this art in that you can get so much from every character in this frame. There's 3 characters. 2 of them are going to do something terrible to this human character because they are absolutely threatening him with his life. Threaten came out as an uncommon in 9th edition. It's a red and 2 generic mana for a sorcery that says untap target creature and gain control of it until end of turn. That creature gains haste until end of turn. And just that look of, oh my god, and that look, the Goblins like, we are doing this. I love that image and that emotion it brings with it.
And this is one of those cards that just became a verb. We call it threaten effects. We've seen so many versions of this, active betrayal, active aggression, all sorts of things, and you just call it a threaten effect usually.
So Mark Brill did the original art from Onslaught, but it got replaced pretty much immediately by the art from 9th edition, and that's the art that's been used ever since. Pete Venter's arts can and often do get replaced, and so it's good to see this one continuing to be the one that's been used.
It feels like Wizards has kind of left this card behind. It's like Active Treason is now the official name of this card, and it's like, okay, but I like one-word card names. Effect. Yeah, they're really sweet.
Yeah, it's important to remember where you came from.
Exactly. It's moving to number 8. It is my only higher on my list, but it's a sweet one. We'll talk about it later. Aaron, what's number 8?
My number 8 is one of those cards that is incredibly frustrating to have to face. One of the things that people like to bring up, everybody has opinions on what needs to happen for Modern to be a good format. Some people are convinced that Modern is just never going to be in a good place, and everybody has their reasons why. And one of the things that people really like to rail on is 8th edition, because 8th edition is the reason that we have some of these obscure older cards that lead to very unfun games, like Blood Moon, the Tron lands, things like that. And so people are like, if we could just get rid of 8th edition, everything would be cool. And another one of the cards that people really like to rail against is a card that was originally printed in Stronghold, and is one of those that even I was like, is that one? It's in Modern Legal, and it's still annoying. My number 8 is Ensnaring Bridge. So Ensnaring Bridge is 3 colorless. It was originally printed in Stronghold, like I said. It is an artifact. It says each creature with power greater than the number of cards in your hand cannot attack. And so usually you find this in prison-style decks. Lantern Control really liked this because it was very easy for them to get rid of their hand. And then they would just sort of grind you out by either milling you or Pyrite Spellbombing you. And this is a card that really can get people, especially if you're playing Dredge, If you see this in game 1, it's like, I have literally nothing I can do about this, And so you find yourself in awkward situations where it's like, well, maybe they'll have 2 lands in their hand, or maybe this. And, this is a card you definitely have to watch out for because it can just get you.
I love Ensnaring Bridge. If I was making this list based on cards that had tournament value, this would be my number 3, 2.
This would be high up there.
Much higher on my list.
Yeah.
And the original Pete Venter's art, again, he's got his art replaced 4 or 5 times for this one. But the original with Gerard on the bridge is really indelible to me.
Oh, yeah.
Not only because the bridge is, you get this otherworldly feeling, but it's part of the story as well.
Yeah, it was totally awesome to be able to see a lot of the Weatherlight characters on these cards doing cool, heroic things, and it was always such a letdown that their cards themselves were always crap. But that's okay, because these cards... Gerard, the card, they made a new one recently that wasn't bad.
Right. I thought the set as a whole didn't sell. I was like, oh,
no. I'm talking about the Weatherlight characters on Legendary cards.
That was going to break my heart.
Were pretty bad. We see Captain Cisse in Commander.
Squee was kind of cool.
Squee was fine,
but overall...
Tongarth and
Orim,
Miri,
Hannah.
Orim and Hannah were not really constructed playable.
Not that great. But this card was awesome. This also is one of those cards that's a nice example of Wizards reprinting it to something reasonable. Before Masters 25 came out, this thing started to get to 60, 70, $100. It was getting insane. And then now it's $15 or so. You can get you a copy. You'd be all right.
And also, there's nothing sweeter than somebody playing Ensnaring Bridge getting caught under their own bridge. It's hilarious.
I'm sorry that hits both of us. That's how that works.
Nice merit lage, brah.
Wow. Reuben, what's number 8?
My number 8 is a type of art that I feel like Pete Venters thrives in, which is a monochromatic feel. He doesn't get an opportunity to flex like this often, but back in the day, they used to just say, Pete, just take all the reds you have and make Tall Room Piper and do whatever the heck you want with all the Tall Room cards, because he did all of the Minotaurs.
I noticed that, yeah.
Tall Room Piper is 4 colorless and a red for a 3/3 Minotaur. All creatures with flying able to block Tall Room Piper do so. But you look at this art and you have depth and scale. You have the feeling of the Piper playing the didgeridoo, but you also have this dragon descending on the Piper, giving you the feeling of it's distracted by the music. Like the art fits the card, and I just love it.
Yeah, the movement, sort of the wind behind the Minotaur pushing the hair out and whatnot. It's really cool.
This is one of those things you feel. Like, I feel like I need to take off my cardigan just looking at this because it feels hot. It feels like you're warm. You know, there's heat sources in there. Like, you feel this card.
Yeah, this was back on with the old frame that was way darker, sort of more maroon almost in terms of being red. Really, really sweet. Let's move on here to our number 7. Aaron, what's number 7?
My number 7 is a card that I didn't really fully appreciate. It had been around since Kamigawa, so I'm sure Evan loves this card, but I was building my Pashtalik Mons deck last year, and I was trying to find, you would think that there would be enough goblins that have ETBs and give you more goblins, but there could always be more, and so I was coming up really lacking, and I was like, I really need to, take the goblins I have and like either, get more or like, recur them somehow, and then my boyfriend looked at me and he's like, you need to play this card, and I couldn't believe I didn't even think of it, and I have it in my deck now, and it completely changed it, and I love it. My number 7 is Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker. So Kiki Jiki is 2 colorless and 3 red, originally printed in Champions of Kamigawa for a legendary creature Goblin Shaman with 2 power, 2 toughness, and haste. You can tap him to put a creature token into play that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control. That creature token has haste, and then you sacrifice it at end of turn. So, competitive folks out there probably think of this in terms of like Splinter Twin, being able to copy that Pestermite or that Deceiver Exarch if you need to, and kind of doing that whole thing. But for my deck, this was perfect because I could take something like a Goblin Marshal. You get the ETB, you make tokens, and you got to sacrifice that token anyways, which is great with your Boggart shenanigans or Pashtalik Mons himself. And so, I couldn't believe for how many times I went through Scryfall and searched Goblin. I was like, what do I need here? And it was staring me in front of the face the whole time.
Yeah, this is one of these sort of the premier creatures that defined Modern for years and years and years. I mean, it still is a force in many ways. And this is a card that, like, back in 2004, it wasn't that exciting. It didn't do much. There wasn't a lot to sort of combo with it. Like, Pestermite wouldn't even show up for another year or two.
5-mana 2/2. Like, who cared about that? And the other thing is, you look at the Pete Venter's art, and in the art, you either have Tatsumasa or Keiga, both of which are legendary and can't be copied by Kiki Jiki.
Yeah.
So it was like, and Kamigawa was full of legendary creatures. Like, all the best stuff you wanted to be doing were 5/5 legendary dragons and huge legendary things happening. There wasn't a Deceiver Exarch or a Restoration Angel or a Zealous Conscripts to pair with this thing.
And it's seeing some new life. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's been seeing some play recently thanks to Conspicuous Snoop, because you want the Kiki Jiki on top, and then whoop, 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 and you run away with the game.
Yeah, I mean, Kamigawa was famously the sort of the slowing down of Magic, the powering down. We've been through Affinity. God help us all. We're gonna take it down a notch. So this was often seen as like sort of a punishing card. Like, it's too expensive. Why is it 3 red in the mana cost?
Yeah.
Like, there's not enough to combo with it at the time. But later on, it was like, wait a minute, this thing is busted.
Right. Now it's the thing you want to go get with your Court of Calling or your Birthing Pod. And yeah, absolutely.
Go Champions of Kamigawa. All right. Reuben, what's your number 7?
Speaking of 5-mana 2/2s, flawless segue. There was a tribe, and the tribe was called the Slivers. And they had an indelible image. In your head, they've got like the pointy beak, they've got the one claw, they got the meat hook in the front, and Pete Venters did, in my mind, like the most indelible Sliver image, which is Ward Sliver. Ward Sliver is 4 colorless and a white for a 2/2 Sliver from Legions. When it enters the battlefield, or as it enters the battlefield, choose a color. All Slivers have protection from the chosen color. So you have what I think of as like the archetypal Sliver. Like, this is what a Sliver looks like in my head. And you also have this ridiculous effect. All of your creatures gain this protection, which is unblockable, doesn't die to Pyroclasm, like all the things you want. It's crazy.
The contrast on this artwork is just gorgeous.
Yeah. Is it like bursting out of something?
That's what it looks like to me.
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah, the first wave of Slivers perished from the Riptide Wizard's magic. The second wave shrugged off their spells like water.
Yeah, it's like in Star Trek when the first Borg gets shot and dies immediately, and the second Borg takes no effect from it.
Wow, this is gorgeous. That red.
The foil is only $27. So for your $140 uncommon, there you go. Thanks, Legions. That's
Legions foils pop nice, especially because they still had the star, I think. like the foil star in the text box.
Right.
Okay.
And so for my number 7 here, this is a card that it kind of defined what an effect like this was for many, many years. It's been more or less a staple in a lot of limited formats. Wizards loves to sort of make this type of creature, even though it may not be called this anymore. It usually has the exact same stats. And even though his art does get replaced here and there, they've actually seemed to sort of flip-flop on which artwork they want to use for Fleshbag Marauder. The Fleshbag Marauder's gross, y'all. It's freaking gross. It's weird.
He's doing the best he can.
I reckon. It's a black and 2 generic mana for a 3/1 uncommon zombie warrior. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature.
Yeah.
And so
this was my number 9.
Nice.
I am a huge fan of these kind of effects in Commander. I particularly like them in Muldrotha because you want spells attached to permanents so that you can recur those permanents. And so I'm running the Fleshbag Marauder and the Merciless Executioner, which is a functional reprint of this. And then they were nice enough to give us Plague Crafter, I think it was.
That's
Yeah, and then there was
Plague
another
Crafter's
one in
Frixion.
Kalmheim even too, or Zendikar Rising. And so yes, I need no excuse to play a Fleshbag Marauder. This was my number 9.
nice. Yeah, this was a great card. I mean, it's always funny to be like, well, do I want to give up that or do I want a 3/1? You can always kind of figure out if that's what you want.
I mean, it's a literal Fleshbag. I like him. Just
Doing the best he can.
It's gross.
Getting
We
through.
also got we also finally got this effect in Pauper thanks to Slum Reaper getting downshifted.
Yeah, finally.
It's a 4/2 for 4 instead of a 3/1 for 3, but
still,
pretty good.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Let's move into our number 6. Aaron, what's number 6?
You know, people love to peg me as being the Dredge Girl or the Dredge Queen, but the truth is I love broken strategies in general. And if I'm not playing Dredge, then the only other thing I really want to be doing is also a 10 on the storm scale. I want to be storming. And if you're storming in Modern, your only real option for this is to play my number 6, which I'm happy to do. It's a little bit more work, but I'll do it if I have to. My number 6 is Grapeshot. So Grapeshot is 1 colorless and a red. It's a sorcery. Not printed until Time Spiral. Like, thanks for giving us another storm card, you guys. The Grapeshot deals 1 damage to target creature or player, and of course it has Storm, which means when you play this spell, you copy it for each spell played before it, and you may choose new targets for this copy. So this card is actually seeing play in other formats thanks to Burgie. Burgie is now a thing in Modern or in Vintage, Burgie Storm, and so the plan is to just kind of play a bunch of cheap things and then Grapeshot somebody, and so I love it. I'm always happy to see this. This is a card I'm never mad to lose to. I'm just like, you know what? This is fine. You've earned it.
There are so many examples of Wizards going like, don't care about Vintage. Not even a little bit. And
But it
Burgie's
is
like,
fine though. It's not to the level of what Valky's doing. Like, it's fine.
sure. Right. It's just when everything's broken, nothing's broken.
Yeah.
This creature gives me a mana every spell I make. Whatever. Who cares? It's fine.
Grapeshot is hilarious because I
this
remember when it first came out, it was like, man, we used to have Tendrils, we used to have Brain Freeze, and you only needed to storm for like 9. Grapeshot asks a lot. Grapeshot is like, you need to cast 19 other spells. And that's a lot of work. And, when this thing was in Standard, there was just no way to do it. There was Pyromancer's Swath that kind of gave you some semblance of turning this into something. And then over the years, we've gotten, Past in Flames.
Pyromancer's Ascension.
And all these other things that allow the Grapeshot to be like, I could Grapeshot for 70 if I wanted to with this deck now.
Or they'll get really fancy and they'll Grapeshot you for like 10. And then you'll be like, you screwed up, haha, and they'll find a way to do it again, and it's like, oh, those copies, that stack doesn't go away.
Well, one of the old tricks was you would cast the Grapeshot, put the Storm trigger on the stack, remand your own Grapeshot, and
get all the
cast it
copies.
again.
Get all the copies and
So
then
the
cast
copies
again.
still go through.
And it's Abandoned Pauper as well. Which
Good.
is
This card is dumb.
Storm
I
cards are
hate it.
absurd.
It's no fun to play against these cards. No fun. I don't like them. They make me sad. Reuben, what's number 6?
Wow.
My number 6, as far as I can tell, is the first time we ever saw a map of Dominaria. In any capacity. In a magazine, in a novel. and here printed on a Magic card. They used to do these huge reveal scenes in flavor texts and on cards as if they were scenes from a movie, and that's what they did with Invasion Plans. Invasion Plans is 2 colorless and a red for an enchantment from Stronghold. All creatures block each combat if able, and the attacking player chooses how each creature blocks each combat. And we have Miri and Gerard standing in front of essentially the invasion map that they had in Volrath's Stronghold.
That's not Miri. That's the guy who turns into a vampire.
Krovax.
Krovax.
Oh, that's Krovax standing there. Sorry, the flavor text has Miri.
Yes.
But this is inside of the underground catacombs, showcasing Volrath's plans. Essentially the overlay of Wrath over Dominaria, which was the whole plot to invasion. So
wow, this is quite the story moment. If there were story spotlight cards, this would probably be easily among them. This is really sweet. Yeah, the idea that there's sort of a globe of Dominaria, it is a world of some sort, and that this is how they're going to invade. That's really sweet.
So if you look at the map there, the central southern peninsula is essentially that is where the main crux of the story occurs. You sort of have that's sort of be where, if you were looking at this and it was Asia, that would be India essentially. Lower right you have Otaria and the Riptide section. On the left, sort of where you would expect Spain or Portugal to be, that is where Benalia is. And then over there in the lower left, that is Teleria, and Teleria West, as they call it.
Oh, I see. Very nice. Well, for my number 6 here, I have one of what to me is one of the most striking cards that he's ever done. It's a very old card. It was just one of those cards that when I pulled it out of the pack, and even if it was these days, like, this is just not an exciting rare. And back in the day, it wasn't even that much exciting either. But it was still cool. It was a big old dragon, and everyone was trying to get excited about dragons back in the day. They only gave you so many. So when you had one that was as beautiful and as sort of striking as Firestorm Hellkite pop out of your Visions pack, you're like, whoa, that is a color palette, y'all. Firestorm Hellkite is a red, blue, and 4 generic mana for a 6/6 flying trample. Now, these days, I would stop talking, and I would say, okay, it's 6 mana for a 6/6 flying trample. The end. Back in the day, you had to pay a cumulative upkeep of a blue and a red mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, you put an age counter on the permanent, and you sacrifice it unless you pay its upkeep cost for each age counter on it.
God, Visions was such a beautiful set. Like, just look at the colors on this, and look at just the jungle underneath that. Like, remember jungles in Magic? When's the last time we had that?
We've got scale elephants, y'all.
Yeah.
Look at that.
That's right. Big scale elephants. I'll take
Beautiful.
it. So, yeah, this was just one of those cards that, that like when Visions was being previewed and when, you sort of saw the cards for the first time, this was like, oh my God, that's a giant cool dragon flying trample. We hadn't seen anything that big before. It was awesome.
This thing beats a Mahatmati Jin in the air. Like, you don't see that very often.
I'll pay that cumulative upkeep swing for 6.
That's
what we'll do in our 90s Magic decks. Yeah. Stop me.
It's huge.
Jesus.
Fantastic. All right. So let's move on here to number 5. Before we get to a shared number 5, Reuben, what is your number 5?
So my number 5, I don't know why it's so indelible in my mind. It is an art that I recall very vividly. It is an effect that I don't remember seeing on a card previous to seeing it on this, which is an aura that gives a creature an effect when the creature dies. Okay. Like that's the whole thing. Weird. I don't remember this being on a Magic card before Chime of Night. Chime of Night is a colorless and a black from Urza's Destiny. It's an aura enchantment creature or enchantment.
This art is weird.
When Chime of Night is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, destroy target non-black creature. I don't remember this effect or this style of thing existing before Chime of Night. Oh, by the way, what is happening with this guy? Who is this guy with the teeth? The teeth are so weird. And the chime itself, also very strange. We've got just like...
the creeped out dude in the corner who's like...
super scared dude.
Is the guy in the corner Duval or is the guy in the front Duval?
We have like this very stark contrast with the abstract background and the super realistic foreground but this guy is wearing skin, by the way. That cloth...
I wondered what that was.
He's wearing, that's skin. He's got the symbol of the...
It kind of reminds me of Carnophage, which I think he also did.
Yes, he did Carnophage and Sangrophage, actually.
Yeah, I mean, but the teeth, I mean, like, just, and that crazy
Nothing
symbol
but
thing
teeth.
on the right.
It almost looks like something, you know how sometimes you see these YouTubers who do makeup, like it almost looks like something you could do as like a visual trick where it's like, here's my tooth
They've,
makeup.
like,
but it's
painted their neck down to make it look like
Yeah.
the mouth.
Yeah, that's creepy. That gives children nightmares. That's what that is.
Yes.
So, of all the Pete Venters cards in all the world, Aaron and I have decided that our number 5 is the same. Aaron, you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, so Pete Venters did both arts for Krovax. He did Krovax the Curse, and then he did Krovax, I think it's Ascendant of Inkar or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so he did both of that. And so obviously Krovax is very good in his hands. And then he takes Krovax a step further with our number 5, which is Massacre. So Massacre is 2 colorless and 2 black. It's a sorcery. And this is where this neat cycle where there were a lot of older cards that you didn't have to pay for. You could find neat ways to get around the cost. And so this one says if an opponent controls a plains and you control a swamp, you can play Massacre without paying its mana cost, and then all creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. So this typically sees play in Legacy as a sideboard card. If you've ever played Reanimator, Death and Taxes can be really, really annoying for you. And so you're probably going to have a swamp, and they're probably going to have a plains, and so being able to play this free of charge, particularly when they're taxing you, is really, really helpful, and you can just sort of wipe the board and hopefully do what you need to do, and getting rid of those either Sworn Canonists or getting rid of that Stoneforge Mystic or that Mom or whatever it might be. But this art, though,
and this art is just like if you wanted to say like what is the most sort of evilish looking character on a Magic card? There are evil characters on Magic cards that are more evil than Krovax, but like the pure sort of the hatred, the anger, like the vengeance that he's going to get from here, like how it's completely symmetric on both sides and whatnot. Like this is a very intense image, and I love that about it. I think this is really sweet.
The only thing I think that's closer that could maybe tie this for most villainous is hatred. I don't think Pete Venters did that, but when you have that close-up of Brevin Ilvek, I mean, that is a heinous picture.
Exactly. So there's only so many of those we have in Magic, and it's nice that we have one here.
I vividly remember being on the wrong side of a game where I had the Massacre. This was a topsy-turvy world where I was playing against Death and Taxes, and I had a Massacre, and my opponent's land drops were Caracas, Rishadan Port, Wasteland, and then I died. And I was just like, I hate everything.
That's fantastic. All right, let's move on here to number 4. Reuben, what's number 4?
So I feel like a theme that we've accidentally stumbled upon with our last couple of picks is Pete Venters and teeth. And
it's true.
I feel like he is very good with the pearly whites. And this card I remember casting a lot. It does feature teeth quite noticeably, but it also has the anger and the close-up of the face and multiple characters. And one of the characters is an ape with earrings and a necklace, and the other one has a headdress. And you look at Simian Grunts, and it's essentially Planet of the Apes on a Magic card.
Yeah,
Simian Grunts is 2 colorless and a green for a 3/4 with Flash and Echo of 2 colorless and a green. So this was effectively a combat trick.
Yeah. These monkeys mean business.
Yeah, as they should. These used to be really exciting stats. This used to be like, oh my god, 3 mana, 3/4 Flash. What? In green? What? That doesn't happen. And
Echo.
Yeah, I know, right?
Paying retail for this card is rough, but
right. And again, we're at the point where like that is retail. Like green and 2 generic mana, 3/4 Flash. I could see it as a rare these days. It's not a big deal. But the card itself, like they're angry. They're coming to get you. The big pearlies are right there.
I love just the stark colors on this. It is certainly a green card, and with green cards, you would expect to see, the lush foliage and the tree trunks and things like that. But that red, it just hits you like bam, and not even in a Gruul capacity. This is mono green, and even just the beautiful silver or white, of their skin just really jumps out at you too.
Yeah, and
just like the card does.
Yeah, if you look at the Urza's Legacy version instead of the Vintage Masters version, it's just so much nicer. The color's really saturated, really sweet. Aaron, what's number 4?
So I said before that I like broken decks, but there are some decks that are so broken that I can't bring myself to play them. I don't have the courage to. I'm too scared. They are even beyond my comprehension, but nonetheless, I love them and I respect them. And one of those decks would be Cephalid Breakfast. And so my number 4 is Cephalo Illusionist. So Cephalo Illusionist is 1 colorless and a blue. It's been printed exactly once in Torment. It is a Cephalid wizard with 1 power and 1 toughness. toughness. Whenever Cephalo Illusionist becomes the target of a spell or ability, this is so stupid. Put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. And it also has an ability that I don't think ever comes up, but it's 2 colorless and a blue. You can tap it, and this turn prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target creature you control. So the way the Cephalid Breakfast works is you pair this with a really innocuous card called Nomad's Encore, which is 1 white, and it has a 0 converted mana cost ability, where the next 1 damage that would be dealt to Nomad's Encore this turn is dealt to target creature you control instead. And there are many ways that this combo has worked in the past, but currently, you just keep targeting Cephalo Illusionist with this ability, and then you mill yourself. You flip over a bunch of Narc Amoeba, which of course I love, and then you dread return your Thassa's Oracle, and then you win the game. And so, Javier Dominguez, this is his pet deck. He's written about this before, and, not many people play it anymore, but those who do love it, and I just don't have the courage.
You can also play that combo with Shuko, which is a 1-mana equipment that equips for 0, and technically equipping targets, so you can just equip. Cephalid Illusionist and the Cephalid Breakfast deck it's a thing that exists.
That's a $16 foil, everybody. Enjoy that. Goodness
and it does have
gracious.
like a fair plan B. Like sometimes they will just play a Stoneforge Mystic and a Batterskull and beat you to death. Like it's fine.
Like sometimes Stoneforge Mystic will get Batterskull instead of Shuko.
Yeah.
Well, we come to another card of which I wish I had held on to literally just half of my collection from the 90s. Because at this point it just makes me kind of ill, somewhat sick. But this is a classic Magic card. This is one of the cards that is referred to as an X effect. This is one of the cards that helped really define what Legends did in terms of a long-term impact, and not just be in the first place to have multicolor cards or Legends or whatever. But you can't deny the power, the sweet, loving, the $733 power of the Abyss that showed up in Legends. For a black and 3 generic mana, it is a world enchantment. Those still exist. They still acknowledge those for some reason. It is a world enchantment that says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, destroy target non-artifact creature that player controls of their choice. It can't be regenerated. That does target. So if it has hexproof, get out of here. You're able to stop it with a hexproof thing, get out of here. It has protection, you can't target it. So that's another thing. So the Abyss, if you have a a protection from black creature out, the Abyss is going to trigger for them every turn. You can't trigger for yours, and it just keeps on going over and over again.
I seem to recall Pete offering playmats of this for a very limited time, and I was so tempted. We all don't need any playmats, but damn it, like look at this art. Like it just looks spectral.
Yeah. There are some people that just a lot of games where you play the Abyss and then your opponent just can no longer win the game.
I can't keep up. Yeah, I have to admit, I've tried using Magus of the Abyss, and it's been a little disappointing. Like, I do think this was great for a moment in time, but like you said, hexproof is a thing, Indestructible is a thing. It just can. In my experience, it's been awkward more often than not. But still love it.
They often kind of fix this effect by saying things like if it can't, if there are no creatures, you sacrifice it, or if you can't target a creature, you sacrifice it, stuff like that. But the old school one, it's all busted.
This one just stays in play forever.
Just stays in there forever.
You don't get to do anything about it.
Yeah.
GG. All right, let's move on here to our number 3. Reuben, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is another card that is indelible, I feel. And it is so indelible that there is a legendary creature now that bears a name that was originally printed in Alpha, although the first time that Pete Venters did the art for this card was 5th edition. There is a man named Mons Johnson, who was a developer for Wizards of the Coast, and he had a special love for goblins. And the first card that Mons Johnson was the namesake for was Mons Goblin Raiders. Yes. Mons Goblin Raiders is a 1-mana, 1/1 goblin. And that is what it is. That's what it is. The entirety of what Mons Goblin Raiders is. But you look at the Pete Venters art for Mons Goblin Raiders, and it's just so it's just so great.
It's
like, I just love every single one of these characters. The old lady, there's the leader who's like, and then there's the right-hand man who's a little bit pudgy. He's got the dad bod going on. You got the two moons in the background. Like,
you got the crazies on the corners
it's
right there.
Everything you think of when you think of goblins. Like, it's not taking itself too seriously. It's doing what it came to do. There's no fancy bells and whistles. You know, and at night too, you know, like I feel like we tend to see goblins more in the daytime. Maybe it's just me, but you know, seeing that big, clear, beautiful moon, or even two moons in the background, like I just love this. And you know, as somebody with a Pasha like Mons deck, that he was the father of all this, so I love it.
It's terrific. This is one of those cards that it needs to exist. It needed to exist in Alpha as here's your baseline, 1 mana, 1/1 goblin. Go for it. We'll make more goblins. We'll make them do cool stuff, but you got to have a baseline.
Yeah.
And this is a great image for it. Mm-hmm. All right. Aaron, what's number 3?
So earlier in the show, I mentioned my love of Storm, and I mentioned that one of the reasons I tend to stay away from Grapeshot is because it's a lot of work. Like you said, you got to count to 19, sometimes even 20. Now with
who
Uro,
has the time?
Right?
Like,
Carry the
I have
one.
to spend 3 hours taking a selfie. I don't have all day to be doing all that, and so
I have to do math.
exactly. No, we're not here
heavens.
for that. But you know, if you do want to play Storm and you want to do it in half the time, you can thank Pete Venters for that as well, because he's responsible for my number 3, which is Tendrils of Agony. So Tendrils of Agony was originally printed in Scourge. It is 2 colorless and 2 black. It's a sorcery. Target player loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life, and it has Storm. So you only got to count to 10 with this one, and that's not hard to do. And so you know, you look at this just traumatizing art here of this.
Yeah.
You know, I've always spent a lot of time trying to figure out, like, are the tendrils coming from them into them? Are they all being affected? But this art is terrifying right here. And, you know, one of my favorite Storm cards right now.
That's one of the cards, like when I came back to Magic, this was Onslaught Block, was just sort of had come and gone. And someone showed me this card, and I was like, oh. what is happening?
Yeah, I don't know. Like a lot of Pete Venters cards, I look at it and I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know I don't like it.
Yeah,
I did not when I first started playing around with Legacy and Vintage Storm, I couldn't bring myself to use this art because Vintage Masters, which is a Magic Online set, was the only one that had this alternative. And so I was using the other art by Vulcan Boggett. It wasn't until like last year that I started to come around to it, and I was like, okay, I like the older frame. I gotta use it. Like, but yeah, it was hard to look at.
Yeah, it's just so freaky looking. Like, and that's a great thing. That's, you know, it's a benefit to how he sort of manipulated the colors and the
when you're
an
artist and you make your audience feel something, that is, you've succeeded.
You got there.
Whether that thing is disgust, anger, sadness,
Fear.
happiness, fear, nausea. Like, you want the audience to react, and I react to this art.
And I react to my number 3, which is one of the best story spotlight cards in Magic. It's it's so much of the culmination of what Magic was sort of going for at the time, and the idea that there had to be this terrible choice that Gerard had to make, and he was there with Yawgmoth, and it was like, you gotta chop off Urza's head, and it's like, okay, they're in the Phyrexian Arena, and that's what he did. For 2 black and a generic mana, it's a rare originally from Apocalypse. It is an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life.
Yep.
That's what it does.
Simple, effective.
That sick angle right up there at Gerard. Get Urza's in there, you get the crowd behind them or whatever, you know, that's really sweet.
And this card has only gotten more expensive. Like, I remember when I first started playing Commander, you could get Arena for like $5. Like, it was still considered like a budget-S card. You're looking at it now, and like the Commander 2015 version is $12. Like, this is a card that has only gained ground, and
wow, the foil is $180. That's insane.
And this is Commander base. No one's playing this in competitive
Those
Magic.
mid-2000s foils, early to mid-2000s foils,
are just
are
ridiculous.
through the roof. And we've been talking about it all episode. It's insane.
All right, let's move here to number 2. Reuben, what's your number 2?
So, again, another art by Pete that I look at it and I don't know what's exactly happening. But it is such an icon that this card spawned dozens of cards. Not only is it a iconic creature type now, but it has inspired legends from Commander sets and callbacks to flavor texts over the decades. And there is nothing quite as indelible for some reason as the Loregoif.
Yeah.
I don't know why, But this thing just it took off and it's the Loregoif.
Well, it took off after poor Hans.
Holy cow! He did both versions.
Run.
He did the old one and the new one.
That's right.
That's incredible.
But I'm of course originally speaking of the Ice Age. Even though they got him to do to come back for 8th edition to remake Loregoif. 2 colorless green for a creature Loregoif. Loregoif's power is equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that number +1.
Yep, this card was super cool. Obviously, Tarmogoyf is the most famous Loregoif or whatever of all, which
we
is
had a
whatever.
whole cycle of them. With
How long did it take you to realize that it's holding a decaying head?
I know. It took me... today I learned, probably.
Yeah, there's a head in there.
But, Mortivore, Magnivore was the whole site. Cognivore won a Pro Tour, and it's thanks to Loregoif.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks to those types
of
cards.
Of course, Tarmogoyf is now
it's the gold standard.
End all be all.
Yeah, but Loregoif, and particularly getting him to make a new version of his own art, that's just, I can't remember seeing that very often.
That's a cool callback.
Very, very rare. But Aaron and I just happen to share the exact same number 2 of all the Pete Ventures. In any of the cards in the world, we chose this one. This one I like for its raw sort of brutality. You can't get away of like the anger, the hatred, I am satisfied that I did this. I'm going to come and get you next type feeling of this card. It's vicious.
Which is ironic because those are the same feelings that a lot of people had for this card because it was so good, it had to be banned in Legacy.
Mm-hmm. Survival of the Fittest is a green and a generic mana for a rare originally from Exodus. It's an enchantment that says one green rather, discard a creature card, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library.
Yeah.
Card's down.
You always hear that joke of the format's fine. You can play any survival deck you want.
Exactly. Combo survival, aggro survival, control survival.
Even saw a little bit of a resurgence in Vintage over the last couple of years thanks to Hollowvine. When Hollow One came out, people were like, oh, well, I can discard cards to this, including my Basking Root Wallas. I can go get Vengevines. And now the deck has evolved to where it really doesn't use survival anymore. But that's really how we got to these sort of Hogak Vine decks or these Hollowvine decks that you see in Vintage. And as I say all the time, you can't know where you're going to know where you've been. And so you have to show, it was amazing for me to literally see this deck just be developed, these hardworking Vintage players that were just brewing and tuning and brewing, and just to look at this. And I wasn't there for the Legacy days when it was good enough to be banned, but I appreciate it for what it is now, and it's just a fantastic card.
Well, it also, lest we forget, it did also win Worlds as what they called Type 2 deck in 1998 in the hands of Brian Selden, among other tournaments in which Survival of the Fittest has won.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, they literally printed Recurring Nightmare in the same set. Like, it was
it's so stupid.
Absolutely ridiculous.
So dumb. The other thing about Survival that is interesting is that Survival of the Fittest was among, if not the first cards that they tested the foiling process on.
Ooh.
You can still find test foil survivals.
Goodness.
For one presumes many thousands of dollars. But yeah, those were among the very first foils that you could find.
Man, I had a Judge foil Survival of the Fittest. I think is $1,100. That is absolutely insane. Let's move on to our number
Put your kids
one.
through college.
I know, right? Reuben, what's your number one?
So my number one is in that World Championship winning recurring survival deck that Brian Selden played. Now, there's a bunch of weirdo creatures in this recurring survival deck. You got your Cloud Chaser Eagles, right? You got your Spike Weavers. You got your Thrall Surgeons, all right? But there's a piece of art that is just so funny and ridiculous, and I can't believe that they actually use it on anything. And when I think of the humor and the hilariousness that is magic art, I think of Orcish Settlers. And it's the top. Like, when I was making this list, I kind of knew Orcish Settlers was going to be my number one.
It's my number 8.
Like, it's so goofy and so, I mean, and it's a callback to American Gothic, obviously. With Orcish Settlers, which is a colorless and a red for a 1/1 orc. XX red, tap, sacrifice Orcish Settlers, destroy X target lands. They wouldn't know their house from a charred hole in a ground.
Wow. This is also the type of card,
by the way.
Yes. This is from Weatherlight. This was my number 8 because I love this card. I love the setup of it. I love the callback to American Gothic. I love the idea of like what the card does and how Wizards will never ever give you this ability ever again. Certainly not on an activated ability where X is the number of lands you're destroying. Okay, sure. But yeah, this card is sweet and really
this might
definable.
be the only instance of overalls on a tournament playable Magic card.
Possible.
Possibly rolling pins. I don't know how many.
I feel like we've seen a rolling pin. Isn't it in Kitchen Oofs or Kitchen Finks?
Oh yeah, Kitchen Finks probably has a rolling
but
pin.
They don't got burnt toast.
They probably don't have burnt toast or a babushka.
On a bent trident. Like what?
Jeans, like denim.
Look at the
like
clavicle on that guy,
denim.
though. That guy
I
works
know.
out.
This orc is listen, it's honest work.
Look, turns out there's denim
Settler
in
scale.
Magic. I don't know if you knew that, but in Dominaria, someone's got some 501s, all right?
Jeez.
Aaron, what is your number 1?
So I took a similar approach to Reuben in that, my number 1 is not something that I don't think has ever really seen any competitive play, but it is so legendary and it's so iconic that when they introduced us to Commander Legends and announced that this character was getting a new card, you could get a new version of the art, which was done by Bastien Duharme, but they were like, we got to bring back the OG. We got to bring back Pete Venters because it's just one. You can't have one without the other. And so, this is a card that I remember. I've been playing Magic for a long time. I remember opening packs of Homelands unironically. And this was a card and this was a character that I would just stare at and just, I had no idea how to use it. I had no idea what to do to make it work, but I just was in awe of this card. And it's just a character I will always think about. My number 1 is Baron Sengir. So Baron Sengir is 5 colorless and 3 black, legendary creature vampire. 5 power and 5 toughness with flying. Whenever a creature dealt damage by Baron Sengir this turn is put into a graveyard, put a +2/+2 counter on Baron Sengir, and then you can tap him to regenerate another vampire. And so, this was what the Sengir vampires did. That's sort of, when something's damaged and it dies, the Sengir vampire gets bigger. And so, this was really the Lord of Vampires back then. And he had a family of Irini and Grandma, and, Eyes and Shade and him had a bit of a rivalry going. And so, but just this iconic, beautiful card of the Starry Night, him holding this globe. You had the ponytail, the pale skin, the chest piece, the noble red robes. I mean, just the Baron Sengir. Like, what?
Just note how so much on this card is never done again. Never a +2/+2 counter. They don't regenerate anything these days. Yeah. But this was the card to pull back in the day.
By the way, now
that's right. A
vampire. And it's $18.
Because it's on the reserved list, which sucks. Because because I too remember opening and buying Homelands packs, unironically, and pulling a Baron Sengir and being super excited about it. This was
you're right about the +2/+2 counter, because even if you look at Sengir the Dark Baron, which is what they brought Pete back for, it's 2 +1/+1 counters. They won't give you,
They just won't do it. And it's that's silly stuff they did back in the day. And it's like, you can just make a counter that does whatever. +1/+1, +2/+2, who cares?
Yeah, go back and read Frankenstein's Monster.
Which is ironic because now, thanks to Ikoria, you can give people flying counters and trample counters. And so we're fine with that. We're fine with giving abilities on a counter, but not numbers.
Yeah, Wall of Roots and Armor Thrall, I think, are a bridge too far with numbers on counters.
-0, -1 counters, no thank you.
Yeah,
very much.
Yeah, so my number 1 is it's a very iconic card for a whole variety of reasons, not just sort of, tournament viability or whatever, but this was the card that got me super pumped when I got into Magic, when I learned how to play Magic, and I got some cards and I tried to build some decks and stuff, and there was a new set coming out, and I bought the Inquest, and I was super pumped about they give you a free copy. Yeah, they give you a free copy of Pacifism back in the day, and it was so cool, and it was so pumped, and they were telling you all this stuff that's going to come in Mirage, and Mirage is coming soon. And here comes Mirage, and check out for Rexian Dreadnought. This thing blew my mind. I thought it was amazing. This was the 1 mana 12/12 trampler they talked about. They teased about it months and months before. Phyrexian Dreadnought is 1 generic mana for a 12/12 rare artifact Dreadnought these days. It has Trample. It's a 12/12, and when it enters the battlefield, you sacrifice it unless you sacrifice any number of creatures with total power 12 or greater, unless you're taking it under an illusionary mask, and then it doesn't matter.
This
or
is
you're
a
stifling that ability.
$90 card.
Or a Torpor Orb.
And reserve list.
Reserve list.
God.
This is another piece of Pete Venter's with monochrome, working with a very low color palette, and coming up with this indelible image of the writhing and the spikes. I mean, all of the things you think of when you think of Pete Venters.
Yeah.
Not knowing exactly what you're looking at. The colors being so stark but yet so similar. The not knowing which direction is up. The sort of combination of appendages and spines and chitin all together. This is like the most Pete Venters of all Pete Venters arts.
Yeah, this was another card that I grew up with. You know, I remember looking at this card and just not really knowing what to do with it. You know, my 15, 16-year-old mind was blown by this. And then, you know, I remember cut to me going to a Legacy event in Illinois and facing Stiflenaught for the first time and seeing this card and being like, what? And it just, you know, just tapped something. It tapped that nostalgia in me where I was like, I don't even care if I lose this because this is dope.
Yeah, once you notice that little mage in the bottom right, itty bitty tiny mage trying to cast his itty bitty spell against this monster, sort of the feel, the look, the sort of the metal, you know, kind of as it bends, and the layering of the metal and whatnot, like all that stuff just comes together as an incredible artwork piece, and I love it.
Yeah.
And that is our top 10 Pete Venters cards. You'll see them on the screen right now. If you're a review, take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Reuben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me. Stay warm, everybody.
Thank you, Reuben.
Thank you. Thanks for going on this adventure with me.
Wow. This was a bit of an inventor's fair. I mean,
oh, goodness. I'm going to go to our final slide before it gets worse. All right.
We love you, Pete.
That's right. We want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and AltarSleeves.com, my co-host, Aaron Campbell and Reuben Bressler. You guys for watching or listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, our Magic Mike subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.